Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a little girl who lived with her mommy and her daddy and her little brother Timmy in a big blue house at the end of a long gravel driveway at the edge of the forest. And one of the people that the little girl loved very much was her Auntie Sherilyn. Now, her auntie was young enough that she, even though she was a grown-up, remembered how to play. It's very important to find adults in your life that remember how to play. And she loved to play with her Auntie Sherilyn. But one day, her Auntie Sherilyn said, I'm going to go live in Korea for a whole year. And I'm going to be teaching people over there how to read and write and talk in English. The little girl was so sad. She was going to miss her auntie very much. Well, her auntie got on a big airplane and she flew all the way over the Pacific Ocean and went to Korea. Now, boys and girls, this was a very, very long time ago when there wasn't the internet and there wasn't cell phones. And so the only way that the little girl could hear from her Auntie Sherilyn was if they wrote letters to each other on paper. And then they would fold them up and they would stick them in an envelope and they would write an address on it and it would have to say, by airmail, and put the stamps on the envelope and then take it to the post office and pay money to send it far, far away in an airplane or maybe even in a boat all the way across the ocean. And so the little girl would wait eagerly for a letter to come in the mailbox from her Auntie Sherilyn so she could learn all about the adventures that her auntie was having. And she would write letters and she would put stickers on them, and sometimes she would put little glittery things inside. I'm sure her auntie loved to open those and get glitter all over her carpet. And one day a letter came from her auntie and it said, "Dear little girl, I'm coming home. I will be there." And it said the day and the time that the auntie was going to arrive in an airplane at the airport. And she said, "But little girl, you're going to be asleep. Your daddy is going to pick me up at the airport. But when you wake up in the morning, I will be there." The little girl was so excited. Auntie Sherilyn was coming home. And the days got closer and closer and closer. And finally it was the day, and the daddy got in the car and he drove all the way over the mountains to Portland to the airport. And it was getting later and later in the day. And oh, that little girl, she wanted to stay awake until the auntie got there. And she was so determined that when Mommy said it was bedtime, the little girl said, "Okay, Mommy," because she had a plan. She got in her bed and she started doing things. She started saying the alphabet all the way forward, and then practicing saying it backwards. And then she counted to 100, and then she counted backwards from 100. And she was even learning Spanish, so she tried to say 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, uno, dos, tres, all the way to 100 in Spanish, and then count backwards. She did everything she could to stay awake. She started doing sit-ups in bed, and she started trying to hold her eyes open. She was so tired, but she wanted to see her Auntie Sherilyn when she got there. But no matter what she did, finally her eyes were falling shut. And the last thing she thought was, Auntie Sherilyn told me in a letter that she'll be there in the morning, and I believe her word is true. And the little girl fell sound asleep. And the next morning, the sun started coming up, and the birds started chirping. And the little girl opened her eyes and she jumped out of bed and she ran down the hallway very quietly, and she got to the guest room where the door was closed, and she could turn the knob very carefully without making any sounds at all. And she opened the guest door, and there, lying in bed with the covers tucked up to her chin, was her Auntie Sherilyn. Auntie Sherilyn opened one eye, and she opened the other eye, and she held out her arms, and the little girl ran, and she jumped into bed with Auntie Sherilyn, and she said to her Auntie Sherilyn, "I knew you would be here. You said you would come, and I believed you, and here you are." Boys and girls, we're going to talk today about how Jesus says in the Bible, "I will come again." Jesus makes promises in the Bible that he will keep, and no matter how hard we try, we can't fulfill them for him. We have to rest and wait for him to answer his promises for us.